Okay, Mr. Waltman here, and today's topic is the neuron. So this is a picture of a neuron, and this is how our body communicates within itself. It's also how our body communicates to the outside world. And believe it or not, we have 100 trillion neurons, mostly in our brain, but also in our peripheral nervous system. And just to give you a sense of comparison, the dolphin has 5.8 trillion. Okay, most of you know that the dolphin's considered a pretty smart animal. The dog has 160 million, and then we take a look at the ant, and the ant has about 10,000 neurons. So let me just say that number again: 100 trillion. That's a 1 with 11 zeros. And what's amazing about these 11 million neurons is that they don't even touch each other. Right? They communicate through chemicals called neuron transmitters. And what I think is even more amazing is that they give rise somehow to our thoughts, our identity, our memories, our emotions, our intelligence, our language. Everything about us is really comes from the interaction of these neurons. So when we talk about neural communication, if you take a look at this chart, human beings are a biopsychosocial system. Okay, so in psychology, we are going to learn about biology a little bit. We'll learn about the psychology of our behavior, and we also will look at the social components of our behaviors. So we're starting the course this year over here. We're going to look at the cellular level, looking at interconnected neurons and how they communicate and give, well, we actually don't know how these neurons give rise to what some of you might consider the mind. And we'll talk about the mind and the brain a little bit more, probably in class. But the neurons, these 100 trillion neurons make up the brain. So it is one functioning organ. And this organ is responsible for, at the next level or at the system level, to basically take in information from the outside world, the sensory energies, light waves, sound waves, chemicals on the tongue and the nose, our sense of touch. Our bodies or the brain is interpreting all of this. And it's also deciding how we're going to respond to all of this stimuli that's coming at us. So this all gives rise to us as human beings. And human beings then, as at the individual level, we are part of a group. We are all part of our individual families at the group level. We're also part of lots of other types of groups as well. Webster Schrader students, a dance team. So there's other kind of groups that we are part of. Then the ethnic level, what kind of cultural influences, what living in this country, living in this state, living in this region, what has that led to? So it might be about taste preferences, kinds of work that we do, maybe how we speak, language, our attitudes can all be influenced by culture. Then finally, our culture on the largest community level is society. How are we getting along with other cultures? And this is a huge area today as we become more connected and we become a global society on so many different levels, and with technologies allowing us to communicate so much easier. Okay, so that gives you some framework for exactly where where are we right now? We're going to be looking at the neuron. So here's some other comparisons about the brain and how neurons communicate across different animals. So what is highlighted in these images is basically an area called, in the human being is called, well, in all these animals, is the motor cortex in purple right here. And then, I'm sorry, in green is the sensory cortex. And back here at the back of the head is the visual cortex. So these areas have very specific roles in our brain. Okay, these are controlling our muscle movements. This area is interpreting interpreting our sensory input, particularly sense of touch, and this is processing visual information in the back of the brain. So we have very similar processing regions in the rat and the cat and the chimpanzee. All right, now what are the parts of the neuron? There's some basic parts that you need to know and understand basically what their role is and what they look like and where they're located. This is how a neuron is typically drawn in a textbook. They actually look different. I mean, there are ones that look like this, but there are other ones that look a little bit different. There are some that are long, some that are short, and so forth. So the the neuron needs to survive, so it gets its nutrients from the cell body. That's the primary role of the cell body, is to nourish the rest of the neuron. Around the cell body, you will see branch-like structures called dendrites. And dendrites receive information. It's one thing to understand about information and communication from one neuron to the next. It's always going from the dendrite and the cell body through the axon over to the terminal branches of the axon. Right? So the dendrites receive information. We'll talk more specifically about how that happens. The axon, this long single nerve, is where the electrical impulse happens. This is where when a neuron fires, when it sends a message, this is where it happens within a neuron. You'll also see that it's covered by these, they look like little sausages on this depiction, and they're really just kind of fatty substance that helps protect this axon. So if you think about a wire that's covered in insulation, plastic, that is used to insulate that wire so it doesn't short out, so it is able to send electricity from a light switch to the light, for example. Similar purpose here. The myelin sheath is a fatty substance that protects that axon, protects that electrical impulse traveling down the axon. There are a couple diseases, Guillain-Barré and the multiple sclerosis. Both have are diseases that eat away or lesion the myelin sheath. So when that happens, particularly we notice it first in the motor neurons, where people do not have control of their, when I say motor neurons, I mean ones that are connected to our muscles that are responsible for moving different parts of our body. So you might see shaking, you might slowness. They won't be able to control their motor movements. And we can see lesions now with an MRI, which is a way to scan the body, particularly the brain. But before, it wasn't so easy to diagnose. So that leaves one structure here, the terminal branches of the axon. And the terminal branches of the axon receive this electrical signal, and there are chemicals called neurotransmitters here at the end of these axons. And that is what is released and communicates to other neurons. So neurons don't actually physically touch each other, but they release chemicals from the axon terminal. And then if we had a picture of another neuron over here, it would be the dendrites that receive that chemical from these terminal branches. All right, so we got cell body, dendrites, axon, terminal branches, myelin sheath. Need to know all those parts and exactly what their function is. Now, we're going to talk about two types of communication. One is how the neuron communicates within itself, from how does it get a message from one end to the other, and then we're going to talk about how communication occurs from one neuron to the other. So I think I'm going to end the first video, and we'll pick up with the action potential next time.